Or do you understand, as you identify these pictures, not only are you saying that Justin's guilty of murder of the contract hit, but you're saying you're guilty too.
Yes, sir.
Is that true?
Yes, sir.
One of the guys currently on trial for young Dolph's tragic murder has not only come forward and confessed to the crime, but he's also thrown his co-defendant under the bus, along with another person he's claiming was part of the conspiracy. It's wild, right? This whole situation just keeps getting deeper, with more names being dragged into the mix as the truth slowly unravels in court. So, the much-anticipated murder trial of the legendary Memphis rapper, young Dolph, kicked off on September 23rd. This case has had everyone on edge, and the details are intense. We've got three main suspects in the spotlight here: Hernandez Govan, Justin Johnson, and Cornelia Smith, all facing serious murder charges. Now here's where it gets real. Johnson and Smith are the ones being accused of actually pulling the trigger and taking young Dolph's life. Govan, on the other hand, is accused of being the mastermind behind the whole thing, allegedly plotting and setting the wheels in motion for this tragic crime. At the moment, we know that Johnson and Smith are cooling their heels inside Shelby County Jail, while Govan, interestingly, has been out on bail for the past year, which is definitely raising some eyebrows. Ever since Govan's been out on bail, things haven't exactly been smooth sailing. He's found himself in some hot water over in South Haven, Mississippi. Apparently, he got picked up by the cops for driving around with a suspended license and not having his license plate mounted properly. Definitely not the best move, right? But that's not all. Turns out there was a warrant out for his arrest in DeSoto County too, and this one's serious. It's for stalking, repeatedly following, and harassing someone, or even making threats. Seems like trouble has a way of following Govan these days. All right, picture this. It's a chilly November 17th, 2021, and Memphis rap icon young Dolph, who was beloved by fans all over, stopped by Makita's Cookies, a place he often visited for a sweet treat. But in a heartbreaking turn of events, tragedy struck, and the world lost him that day to a senseless shooting. Fast forward almost 3 years later, and here we are. The wheels of justice are finally turning. This Monday, the suspects tied to this devastating event were tried, bringing us closer to some long-awaited answers. These cases are difficult for all parties. The family of the defendants, family of the deceased, said attorney Leslie Ballin. So this is a case, and emotions will run high. Back in January 2022, two men, Justin Johnson, 24, and Cornelia Smith Jr., 32, were officially charged with some pretty serious crimes. We're talking first-degree murder, unlawful possession of a firearm, and even theft of property. According to the police, these two guys allegedly pulled up in a stolen Mercedes-Benz, hopped out, and opened fire right into the store where none other than young Dolph was inside, just casually making a purchase. It's a wild and heartbreaking situation that really shook a lot of people. The trial was originally set to kick off on June 3rd, but things took a bit of a turn when the defense team requested more time to bring in their experts for a deeper review of the case. And because this case has been making waves in Shelby County, thanks to all the media buzz, an outside jury is being brought in to make sure things stay as fair as possible. So, while everyone was gearing up for a June start, it looks like the defense team hit pause for a bit to give both sides the chance to prep fully and let the jury come in without any outside noise swaying their decisions. The fact that the judge in this case partially granted a change of venue request to include the selection of the jury from Davidson County, that's very unusual, Ballin said. In my 47 years of practice, I can count on one hand the number of times that type of release has been granted. The trial for Hernandez Govan, the man alleged to have orchestrated the tragic hit on young Dolph, was scheduled to kick off the next day. Govan's got some serious charges hanging over his head, including first-degree murder and conspiracy, which definitely adds a layer of gravity to the situation. Now, amidst all this intense media spotlight, Ballin, Govan's attorney, is staying optimistic. He believes that despite the frenzy of headlines and public scrutiny, it's still entirely possible to assemble a jury that can remain unbiased and fair. Generally, no matter how much publicity a case has gotten, a jury can be found that has either not heard of the case or, despite what they have heard, could still judge the case on the proof that is presented in the courtroom. In a significant development, another individual entangled in this case, Jamarcus Johnson, decided to take a plea deal, admitting guilt to 3 counts of being an accessory after the fact back in October 2023. As a result of this admission, he's looking at a potential prison sentence of anywhere from 6 to 12 years. Now, if the other suspects are ultimately convicted, they could be staring down the barrel of life behind bars without any chance of parole. To put that in perspective, as Ballin pointed out, that could mean serving a staggering 51 years in the state of Tennessee. The stakes are incredibly high, and the ramifications of these decisions are profound. So, as we kicked off the trial on Monday for the tragic murder of Memphis rapper Young Dolph, some intriguing developments came to light. It turns out that 2 out of the 3 suspects, who were initially slated to stand trial, have decided to take the stand and testify against the 3rd suspect. This twist adds another layer to an already intense situation, and it'll be fascinating to see how it unfolds. The courtroom was alive with a palpable tension as the trial commenced on Monday, September 23rd, kicking off with an unexpected twist that took everyone by surprise. Right from the get-go, the prosecution didn't hold back, swiftly presenting some grave allegations against the trio, Justin Johnson, Cornelius Smith, and Hernandez Govan. But the real drama unfolded when Smith stepped up to the witness stand. This was the 2nd gunman featured in that shocking footage of the shooting, and he candidly confessed that he and Johnson had fired multiple shots into the beloved Medica's cookies in Memphis. Yet, the revelations didn't end there. In a jaw-dropping turn of events, Smith unveiled a staggering detail. He and Johnson had actually FaceTimed Big Jook, the late brother of Yo Gotti, who allegedly orchestrated the entire plan and ordered the hit. This explosive revelation sent shockwaves through the courtroom, leaving everyone on the edge of their seats and the trial hanging in a gripping suspense. "I wasn't feeling nothing at the time," Smith said on the stand. "I was just trying to get some money. I saw him standing by the window. I just got out of the car and started shooting." And get this, Smith came clean and straight up admitted that Jook put a bounty on Dolph's head, a whopping $100,000. And here's the kicker. Govan was the one who spilled the tea and let Smith and Johnson in on the whole deal. Apparently, the plan was for Smith and Johnson to pocket $40,000 each, while Govan would get $20,000 as their cut. Crazy, right? But it doesn't stop there. Smith really went into detail about the shooting too. He even revealed that things went sideways when Dolph's brother Marcus fought back and actually shot at them. Both Smith and Johnson got hit in the crossfire. Smith himself took bullets in the arm, back, and leg, but instead of heading to the hospital, he decided to patch himself up with a medical kit at a nearby apartment. Now, Smith and Johnson went through with the job, but things didn't exactly go as planned when it came to the payday. According to Smith, they were supposed to get a whole lot more cash than what they ended up with. Instead of the big bucks they were promised, Smith claims he only got $800. Yup, you heard that right, just $800 for all that. Now Smith, Johnson, and Govan are in some deep trouble. They're all staring down some serious charges, murder charges to be exact. And if things don't go their way in court, it's not looking good for them at all. If convicted, they could be locked up for life with no chance of getting out. That's right, no parole, no second chances. It's life behind bars.
Do you understand, as you identify these pictures, not only are you saying that Justin's guilty of murder, of the contract hit, but you're saying you're guilty too.
Yes, sir.
Isn't that true?
Yes, sir.
You see, young Dolph's death sent shockwaves through Memphis, triggering a violent chain reaction. The suspects in his murder, who faced intense media scrutiny, have met grim fates themselves. This chaos and loss have left behind unanswered questions and deep sorrow.
Man once named as a person of interest in young Dolph's murder has now also been killed.
In November 2021, Dolph, a beloved community figure, was tragically killed while giving out Thanksgiving turkeys. The city was engulfed in anger and tension, with police urging residents to stay indoors.
Tonight, we strongly encourage everyone to stay home if you do not have to be out.
As violence erupted, many people, including celebrities like Key Glock and Moneybag Yo, fled Memphis to escape the turmoil. Young Dolph's tragic death really shook things up. When the news came out that he had been killed, there was a lot of speculation about who might have been involved. But it wasn't too long before the police started identifying people connected to the case.
2 new men have been named persons of interest in the young Dolph murder case. The first is Devin Burns. Burns has an active warrant out for aggravated assault and theft, which are unrelated to this case. The other man is Joshua Taylor. Memphis police are looking for both of these men and offering a $2,000 reward for each arrest.
In this case, there was a bit of a difference between the men involved. Some were directly charged with the murder, others were seen as accomplices, and a few were just named as persons of interest. But that's not where it ends. There was one more person on the list, and they believe this individual was the mastermind behind the entire plan.
Hernandez Govan made his first appearance in South Haven court this morning. He's the same man who's accused of being the mastermind behind the shooting death of rapper Young Dolph.
So here's how it went down. Once they caught one person, it set off a chain reaction. That one arrest led to another, and before long, it was like a domino effect, with all the people involved getting exposed. Now, all these names were plastered across the news, and I mentioned Govan as the mastermind, based on what was being reported at the time. But here's where it gets interesting. Govan has since been granted bond and was currently on house arrest, with Young Dolph's family's approval. Meanwhile, Justin Johnson and Cornelia Smith are still behind bars. So it raises the question, why is someone accused of first-degree murder allowed to be at home? That's got people wondering if Govan was really as involved in Young Dolph's death as we initially thought. Plus, after Dolph's murder, when people were out for revenge, they didn't go after the main suspect right away. Instead, they went after someone else first. The scene was pretty intense. It could have been just a coincidence, but even the news outlets were pointing out a pretty strong connection between Young Dolph's murder and Joshua Taylor. It left the locals feeling like this was far from over, that there was definitely more to come. Some YouTubers started speculating that Young Dolph's murder might be tied to a Memphis gang called Trulla Mafia. We'll break that down a little later, but keep in mind, King AK-47 thinks this wasn't some random act. He suggests Dolph's death was actually a well-coordinated hit by a serious organization.
About to start dying and going to jail real soon. Ain't nobody want to believe me, bruh. All this is tied to Dolph. All this, bruh. All this is trickle-down effects.
Here's a key point. Joshua Taylor wasn't just another gang member. He was actually the leader. With the hit on Young Dolph making headlines, it all came down to the leader of the gang. At first, people were pretty confused, wondering why TZ was targeted instead of the actual shooters. Well, the simple reason is that the shooters were just carrying out orders. Now, there's another strange death to discuss. This one's about a rapper named Big Nusky. He was reportedly close to Justin Johnson, and as we look into it more, you'll see he's connected to some pretty interesting things. One obvious reason TZ and Big Nusky were targeted is because they were still out on the streets while the two shooters in Young Dolph's case are locked up. It's definitely easier to go after someone who isn't behind bars. That said, Justin Johnson did get punched in the face while in jail. And on top of that, the suspects in Dolph's murder were put in special uniforms for their own protection from other inmates. Now, it seems like Taylor's Mafia didn't have a solid structure, but if they were involved in something major like Dolph's murder, you can bet their leader, CEO TZ, had to sign off on it. As the head of a criminal empire, TZ definitely made some enemies, so it's not shocking that there were people out to get him. And what happened next just adds to the idea that this was tied to Young Dolph's murder.
Family members confirmed Joshua Taylor was found shot and killed in Orange Mound yesterday afternoon, leaving that community on edge as they worry who might be next.
TZ's death was seen by some as a form of street justice, with social media buzzing about revenge and karma. Violence continued with shootings in areas linked to Dolph. A rapper named Lotta Cash Desto, thought to be Govan's daughter, was killed, potentially linking back to the feud between Trulla Mafia and Double R. It's also worth noting that Double R and Trulla Mafia were once part of the same gang before they split. Now let's break down the gang affiliations of the suspects in Young Dolph's murder, and more importantly, try to understand why the hit was ordered on him in the first place. Justin Johnson, also known as Straight Drop, is one of the suspects in the shooting case. In this clip, you can see him wearing a Paper Route Empire chain, which is significant. Even though Straight Drop wasn't officially signed to Young Dolph, it's clear he knew Dolph, being a rising rapper from Memphis. Some people think Johnson wasn't just a fan rocking the chain. There's also a chilling moment where you see Dolph performing at a club, and in the background, Johnson is there too. It's unsettling to think about how often Dolph may have unknowingly crossed paths with someone who would later become a threat. On top of that, cut to the Chase TV uncovered photos showing Trulla Mafia members wearing similar chains.
And you remember that pre-chain you seen Straight Drop always posing with, always mocking Young Dolph camp? JoJo Flat does that as well. Would you like to see photos of him with the pre-chain? Let's get to it. Boom. Look at JoJo Flat. Got the same weapon that the shooter had of the Young Dolph in one hand.
Normally, when you see someone wearing a G-Unit or Wu-Tang chain, you'd assume they're just a huge fan of the music, right? Well, with PRE chains, it's the total opposite. Now let's talk about a key detail in the murder of Young Dolph. a stolen white Mercedes. Like I mentioned earlier, this is a well-organized crime ring, and one of their big moves is carjacking. These stolen cars? They're ideal for getting things done and pulling off their operations.
Young Dolph killer's JoJo Splat and straight drop fingerprints has allegedly been found on a getaway car, which is the white Mercedes-Benz.
This vehicle was found abandoned in Memphis, further connecting the dots in this tragic and ongoing saga.
We just learned that Covington police believe a deadly shooting there last week may be related to the shooting of young Dolph. Covington Police Chief L.D. Lindsay just confirmed that his department believes this white Mercedes involved in young Dolph's shooting may also be involved in a shooting on South College Street and West Church Avenue.
Now, with Trolla Mafia being the prime suspects in young Dolph's murder, let's unpack why they might have had beef with him. Believe it or not, Trolla Mafia and Dolph actually had a decent relationship at one point. Dolph even collaborated with rapper J Money Trolla on a track. Sadly, J Money Trolla was killed in 2016 along with his brother D Money. The prime suspect, Uncle Danny, who was signed to Paper Route Empire. The only real evidence linking him to the murder is a peculiar Facebook message after Dolph's death. J Money's mom mentioned that her son didn't care about Dolph or D Money and had even signed D Money's killer. For Dolph, his deal with the new artist was all business. He saw potential and wasn't focused on Memphis street issues since he had moved to Atlanta. But for the Trolla Mafia, this probably felt like a betrayal. And in gang culture, betrayal often leads to retaliation. Key Glock, another Paper Route Empire artist, and Dolph's protege might be connected to this mess too. Dolph and Glock were cousins through marriage and collaborators on the Dumb and Dumber albums. After Dolph's death, connections between Glock and the suspects emerged, though he was also friends with CEO Teezy. Dolph's support was crucial for Glock's career, making it hard to believe Glock would be involved in harming Dolph. However, Key Glock still needs to clear up his connections. For Cut to the Chase TV, the motive behind Dolph's murder might be cutting off the cash flow to Uncle Danny or Key Glock. Killing Dolph would essentially dry up their main income source. When Dolph was murdered, many pointed fingers at Yo Gotti due to a long-standing feud. Dolph had rejected Gotti's label offer and later released an album that seemed to challenge Gotti's claim as the king of Memphis. The beef escalated with threats and diss tracks, especially from Gotti's associate, Black Youngsta. There were even 2 attempts on Dolph's life in 2017, one involving a Jeep that was shot up in North Carolina. Black Youngsta's van was linked to the shooting, though he claimed the vehicle was stolen. Dolph dodged another attack, and again, Yo Gotti was in town. Gotti's friend got charged for the shooting, but the charges were dropped. When Dolph was shot for the 3rd time and didn't survive, people suspected Gotti and his crew, but there was no evidence linking them. Instead, Dolph's label and gang seemed to have allied with Trolla Mafia. Lately, there was speculation about a link between Trolla Mafia and Gotti's CMG label, especially after photos surfaced of Hernandez Govan with Gotti's brother, Big Jook. While there's no photo of Govan with Gotti, the connection is raising some eyebrows. Then rumors started swirling around Big Jook. There was chatter that he might have been mixed up in something major, specifically that he allegedly put out a $40K bounty on Dolph. Even Grove Hero from Memphis jumped on Instagram with a video saying Big Jook was behind the hit.
If a nigga told you, hey man, look bro, my Jook put a $40,000 hit on you, bro.
It's almost like someone peered into the future with a telescope and saw exactly what was coming. Thanks for watching, folks. If you enjoyed this video, stay tuned for our next one.